Hello, my little friends of the forest. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. My name is Andy Zaremba, and yesterday I had the privilege to interview Dr. John Demartini. And Dr. Martini describes himself as a human behavioral specialist, and he's a bestseller and international author. He's an educator, business consultant with Fortune 500 companies and CEOs. He's written something like 40 books, and he's actually on his way here to Vancouver. He'll be doing two workshops on October 10th and October 12th. The first one is called Accessing Your Seven Greatest Powers, and he gets into that in the podcast of what those seven greatest powers are and what that looks like. And the second on October 12th is Financial Freedom and Mastery. And you can access both of those tickets on consciousliving.radio.org. Thanks to Andrew Reimier for hooking me up with this interview. And today, we dove deep into many different subjects. In fact, this is one of the easiest interviews I've ever done, I think. I lobbed up 5 or 6 questions to him, and then he proceeded to knock them out of the park one by one. And it's so jam-packed with information. You can see how his lifetime of self-learning and knowledge really shines throughout our conversation. There's so many juicy tidbits in there. I particularly like the conversation around duality, around light versus dark, good, evil, chaos, order, and how that exists in our lives and in the universe all the time. And we have to be able to accept those darker and evil parts of our society and our life, which is an interesting conversation to have now, given the events in Las Vegas just a few days ago. And he talks about how those type of events are always going to happen, and it's something that is part of living. So interesting part of the conversation there. And I also did some crowdsourcing of questions from the PSI community. So there's 3 or 4 questions at the end that I thought were really good and applicable to ask Dr. John Demartini. So stay tuned for those at the end. But it was a pleasure to speak with John. He's a wealth of information. I'd love to speak with him again because there was just so much we could have dove into. And quite frankly, an hour and 5 minutes isn't even close to scratch the surface with this guy. So without further ado, I give you Dr. John Demartini. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Vancouver Real. My name is Andy Zaremba, and I'm just going to jump right into this call today because I have the privilege and honor to be interviewing Dr. John Demartini. And he's actually woken up at 4 a.m. He's in Japan right now just to do this interview. So, John, welcome to Vancouver Real, and thank you for taking this call.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you and be on the show.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that, you really don't need to do interviews like this anymore. And to me, this really speaks to like your work ethic and just how, awakened you are to life in general. And I've always been curious as to why some people, wake up or become woke, as people call it these days. And some people just stay stagnant and get caught up in regular life routines, and they just kind of stay stuck. And I was wondering, we are kind of the summation of our life experiences. And what are some of the biggest experiences in your life that you can recall that have led you up to where you are today, and maybe what drives you and continues to make you so open?
Well, I think that everything in our life has led us to where we are. Everything is on the way, not in the way, even though at times we see them in the way. I was born with a leg turned inward and an arm turned inward, and had to wear braces as a child till I was 4. And when I finally begged my dad to let me out of those braces, I started running everywhere. And he said, well, as long as you keep your leg and arm straight, I can take you out of the braces. If not, I got to put you back in. And so I made sure my arm and leg was straight, and I literally ran everywhere, because when you've been constrained, you want to be free. I really believe that had some sort of an impact on me wanting to live a kind of a nomadic, free life where I didn't feel constrained, because I travel full time, as you know.
Mhm.
I was also put in a speech path. I had to go to speech pathologist because I couldn't pronounce and speak properly. And I had problems in speaking. And when I got to about 6 years old and I started elementary school in first grade, I couldn't read. I found out I couldn't read. I had dyslexia. And so I started out in the normal class. I went to remedial reading and then finally into the dunce class. I had to wear a dunce cap.
Wow.
And my teacher finally had my parents come to the school and said, Mr. and Mrs. Demartini, I'm afraid your son has got learning problems. I'm afraid he'll never be able to read. He'll never be able to write. He'll never be able to communicate. He'll never go very far in life. And I don't think he's going to amount to much. Well, that was exactly what I needed, I think, to do what I'm doing today. I read, I write, I travel, and I teach. And her premonition, I guess you could say, her belief system at the time led me to trying to make it through elementary school by asking the smartest kids, what did they learn from the class? So I learned how to ask questions. And that was perfect because today my methodologies are question methodologies. And I really believe that had an impact on me learning how to get through life with learning how to ask questions. So I ended up following in her belief system. And by the time I was 13, 14 years old, I was a street kid. So I left home when I was 13, and then I was a street kid, and I dropped out of school. And I picked up surfing as a sport. And I wanted to go to California and make it to Hawaii eventually. So I hitchhiked to California when I was 14, and then throughout Mexico. And then I hung out on the beaches of California and Mexico for quite a while. And then I eventually panhandled enough money to fly to Hawaii and made it to Hawaii. I first lived under a bridge. That too was too noisy. I lived in a park bench at Iikai. And then I finally moved up to a bathroom because it would rain a lot. And then I found an abandoned car. I kept social climbing until I eventually lived in a tent. And I was surfing every day and eating whatever I could get by on and off the land and stuff, and doing little odd jobs and things. But because of some of the things I ate, I ended up with strychnine poisoning and cyanide poisoning, and didn't realize it was accumulating. And I nearly died when I was 17.
Wow. After
being there a couple of years. And I thought it was because I was surfing 11 hours a day that I had electrolyte imbalance, but it turned out it was something more than that. And I almost died. I literally, if you've seen a rat with rat poisoning, you see it sticking up on its back with its legs curled up and its arms curled up. That's what started happening to me.
Oh my gosh.
And eventually it stopped my diaphragm. And if it wasn't, I found myself, I went unconscious in the parking lot of a supermarket. And I don't know, I don't have any conscious recollection of what happened there, but I somehow got taken back to my tent. So somebody recognized me and found where my tent was and dumped me off my tent. So for 3.5 days, I was unconscious in this tent. And I finally came to, luckily a lady found me in my tent and helped me recover a bit and got some fluids in me and took me to a health food store. And at the health food store, I saw a flyer on a door saying special guest speaker, Paul Bragg. Now, I never went to classes, but there was something about this flyer that made me want to go and to listen to this guy. So I went to this little class with 35 people on a wooden floor at the Sunset Recreation Hall. And there was a man who it looked like he was 80 or 90s. And he began to speak. And this man, that one night, with 1 hour, with his one message, spoke so deeply to me, I could have sworn the whole thing was for me. And he said that we have a body, we have a mind, and we have a soul. And our body must be directed by our mind, and mind must be directed by our soul if we want to maximize who we are. And that we have to set goals, because we're captains of our ship and masters of our fate. We're the ones that decide what we do in life. And that doesn't matter where you've come from or what you've gone through. It matters is what you decide to do today. Take command of your life. And he said, you need to set a goal for yourself, your family, your community, your city, your state, your nation, your world for at least 100 years, 120 years, because you have something special to do on the planet. Well, nobody ever spoke to me like this. And that night, my life changed. I never believed I was going to be able to read or be intelligent. But that night, I saw a possibility that maybe I could overcome my learning problems. I really wanted to be intelligent, but I never thought I was going to be until that night. And that night, I saw a vision in his little meditation, guided meditation he took us through. And I saw a vision of standing up in front of 1 million people. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to be intelligent and be able to share something. So that night I saw a vision of what I wanted to do. I started studying with this man every morning for the next 3 weeks. And he helped me revamp my thinking. He gave me a new affirmation to follow. I told him I didn't know how to read. And he said that every day say, I am a genius and I apply my wisdom. He said, if you say that every single day and never miss a day for the rest of your life, sooner or later your body will tingle with it and so will the world. So I started meditating like he instructed. I started talking to myself differently. I started visualizing what I wanted and writing down goals. I started doing what he said. And in a meditation, some little inner voice and vision said, it's time to see your parents. Go back to Texas. So I hitchhiked to Honolulu. I flew back to LA, hitchhiked from LA back to Houston. And I saw my mom and dad. They were pleased that I had returned. I had long hair and a beard at the time, and as the 60 kids did, 70 kids did. And my mom and dad encouraged me to take a GED, high school equivalency. And somehow I miraculously passed that. I didn't know how to read half the questions. I just guessed, and I passed. I then went on to take a college entrance exam. They suggested I do that just in case I ever wanted to go to college. So I got my high school degree. I never finished high school. I took a GED and I passed it by guessing. Then I took a college entrance exam, and the same thing happened. I passed. It was something I didn't expect, but I did it. And I wanted to start to go to college. And then I took my first college class, and I needed a 72 to pass, but I bombed it. I ended up with a 27 on the first test. And I almost gave up. When I saw those results, I just wanted to cry in my car and kind of shrivel up. All I could do is hear my first grade teacher. And then my mom, I came home, and my mom came home from shopping. And she said, son, what's wrong? I was curled up in a fetal position under this little Bible stand she had in the living room. And she said, what happened, son? What's wrong? She hadn't seen me cry in a long time. I said, Mom, I blew the test. I guess I don't have what it takes. I guess I'll never read or write, communicate, no amount of thing, never go very far in life. She didn't know what to say. She just looked at me. Finally, she put her right hand on my shoulder, and she said something that only a mother could say. Son, whether you become a great teacher and philosopher and travel the world like you dream, whether you return to Hawaii and ride big waves like you've done, or you return to the streets and panhandle as a bum like you've done, I just want to let you know your father and I are going to love you no matter what you do, boy. When she said that, my hand went into a fist. I reclaimed that vision, saw that vision. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading. I'm going to master this thing called study and teaching. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance, pay whatever price to give my service of love across this planet. And I'm going to not let any human being on the face of the earth stop me, not even myself. So I got up. I hugged my mom. I went into my room. I got a dictionary out, and I started memorizing a dictionary. and I did 30 words a day. And my mom would test me on how to spell it, pronounce it, and put it in some sort of meaningful sentence. And I grew my vocabulary 30 words a day until I could pass school. And I didn't stop. I made a commitment to read every day, all day. And I slowly gradually made it where I started excelling in school. About a year later, my mom, she said, "Son, what do you want for your birthday? You're going to be 19 years old. What do you want for your birthday and for Christmas?" I said, "Mom, I want the greatest teachings on the face of the earth, the greatest writings that any human being is great has ever written." And she said, "You sure you don't want a t-shirt, son?" I said, "No, ma'am. I just want the greatest writings, greatest teachings ever known." She said, "Well, let me see what I can do." So she contacted her brother, who was a professor at MIT, who was a physicist and chemist. And he, as a gift, gathered thousands of books and sent 2 6 by 6 by 6 foot wooden crates on a flatbed truck to our home. And I remember when I went out there, I got a crowbar and I went out there and opened up. They put them on the ground. I opened them up and I filled my room with thousands of books. I had a little yoga mat in the center, and I just sat and I read 18, 20 hours a day. The only time I wasn't reading was I was driving to class, and I read on the way there. And once I learned I could read, I never stopped. I've read now over 30,100 books now.
Wow.
And I never stopped. I still read every day. I got a bag of books in front of me here. I probably have 75 to 80 books with me right now that I'm traveling with. And I just want to know the laws of the universe and about human behavior and anything that maximized human awareness and potential. I wanted to read, study. That led me to 296 different disciplines. And I wanted to read, and I wanted to start teaching. And luckily, right when I was 18, I had a 375-pound Afro-American woman ask me to tutor her. And then I had an Iranian Persian man as my second student, who for 45 years is still my student. Then I had a German boy ask me to teach him mathematics. I started growing my math. And then I had about 16 or 17 kids I started tutoring. When I moved on from Wharton, the first 2 years in college, I went on to the University of Houston. And I started teaching outdoors under the trees to an average of about 100 to 150 students every day at noon. And when it rained, we go into the cafeteria. Then when I went on to professional school, I started doing classes 7 nights a week. And I'd read early in the morning. I get up early in the morning at 2 and speed read till 6:30, 4 to 7 books. And then I'd go to class. And then at 7 o'clock, I'd teach classes from 7 to 10 every night. Go to sleep. I slept 4 hours a day, and I just read and studied and taught. When I went into practice, after all the years of college, I did the same thing. I started teaching every night. And I guess I never stopped. That teaching went first around the city, and then it went around the state, and then around all over the United States, all but two states. And then I started going to Canada and then over to Europe, and it kept growing. And now I've been blessed to have students in every country around the world. And as long as I'm able to do it, I'll be teaching.
Well, that's incredible. Makes me think of this idea that sometimes our pain can become our greatest gift to the world. And
I believe that. I believe that our void is our value. It drives us.
Yeah. And, you had this great amount of pain and potentially shame around not being able to read as a child. And then for whatever reason, somehow you became this like super learner. You began speed reading thousands and thousands of books, being able to retain all that knowledge, which I think is really rare to be able to speed read and retain knowledge. And I guess the question I have around that is, I want to go back to this idea of the affirmations that gentleman told you to start doing, the affirmations and the visualizations. Do you think those are partially what gave you the ability to digest and retain so much information?
Well, I think, see, every human being has a set of priorities, a set of values that they live their life by. And whatever's highest on their value, they are spontaneously inspired to do. See, my highest value is teaching. Second highest value is learning. Third is traveling. And so nobody ever has to remind me, motivate me, incentivize me to do those three things. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that if I walk, fly into a city, I'm about to go to Bucharest tonight, well, today. And I get there at midnight and I start the next day. I teach all day there. And I'm the kind of guy that'll go into a city, get to a hotel the night before, walk around the hotel just in case there's another speaking opportunity.
That's incredible. So I guess this kind of leads to the story of, or how you even got to doing this interview with me at 4 a.m. when you're in Japan, which is incredible. So do you think, again, it's that culmination of your life experience that's led you to being this determined?
Yeah, I'm not determined in lower value things. I mean, I learned a long time ago that anytime you fill your day with anything other than the highest priority and highest values, you devalue yourself. So I haven't cooked since I was 24 years old. I haven't driven a car in 27 years. I don't do anything but research, write, travel, teach. Everything else has been delegated. I've surrounded myself with people that are experts. So I don't do anything but research, write, travel, teach. I'm pretty well useless outside that. I just do my specialized knowledge and just do what I core competence. I always tell people start with what you know and let what you know grow. And so I'm not very competent outside human behavior, researching, writing, traveling, and teaching. The rest of it's all been delegated.
Right. I really like that idea of sticking with, your core competencies, really developing that and growing that, and delegating the minutia, the stuff that really wouldn't be that serving for you to dedicate a lot of energy to other people. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with, really. They struggle with being able to delegate because I think they have beliefs that maybe other people can't do the job as good as them or something like that. And
yeah, there's a book called The Time Trap by Alec McKinsey that I read when I was 28. And I can tell you that was a very catalytic help to me. Because what I did after reading that book, I wrote down every single thing that I do in a day, down to the tiniest little action. And then next to it, in a column next to it, I wrote down how much does it produce income per hour. Next to that, I wrote down how much meaning does it have on a 1 to 7 scale. The next to that is how much would it cost me to replace this, to have somebody else do this to the same competency. The next to that is how much time did I spend on it. When I got through that, I reprioritized my life according to meaning and productivity and profitability. And then I saw very clearly where my spreads were, where I could extract surplus labor value out of delegating, and what would give me the most meaningful thing. And in my case, it was teaching. I could produce the most through leverage. And I was a doctor at the time, so I could sit in a cubicle and work with patients, but that was actually less productive than actually going out and generating them by speaking. So I slowly but surely delegated all lower priority things that would devalue me and my time and get on with doing the highest priority things. There's a principle that if you don't fill your day with the highest priority actions that inspire you, it fills up with the lower priority distractions that don't. And if you want an inspired life, you have the responsibility to prioritize and do something of service that earns an income so you have the money to delegate with. So the universe rewards people that are prioritizing and delegating and doing things that serve people and have the fulfillment of making a difference and being rewarded. I always say, if you serve, you deserve. And so I just did that, and I kept doing that. And it boiled down to researching, writing, traveling, and teaching. So I made a commitment that I would delegate everything else away and find people that absolutely were inspired to do what I am not designed to do, that devalues me. Because until you value you can't expect the world to. And once you value, the world begins to. And so I learned by my experience and my studies and some trial and error, most of it mentorship, to structure my life in such a way that I could have an inspired life. And I assumed that everybody lived that way. But as you know, not everybody does.
Yeah.
Many people have quiet lives of desperation because they haven't learned the principles. I'm coming there to Vancouver shortly, and I'm going to be doing a program there called, Accessing Your Seven Greatest Powers, and another one on financial mastery and freedom. If it was up to me, I would, the information that I've been blessed to, integrate into my own life and to share with so many people, if there's a way that they could be there, I'm absolutely certain it would help them. Because, many people will be not even realize that they're partly trapped. And there's a way of freeing that up. And if they could get access to this that I'm sharing, I'm absolutely certain it can help them.
That's right.
I've watched it in thousands of people. So I love sharing that. I just like passing the torch of what I've been blessed to learn for myself and pass it on and watch what it does with other people.
Yeah. Well, you will be here on October 10th. And if people do want to pick up tickets to the event, they can actually go through consciouslivingradio.org, and you can grab tickets to that event. And I believe there's still some available. And as you mentioned, you're going to be discussing accessing your seven greatest powers. I was wondering if you can give people an overview of what those seven greatest powers are, and maybe a little bit about each one.
Yeah, because I believe that there are seven basic areas of life that people can master and empower. I believe that every human being has a desire innately to know. They have an epistemological search to try to know things and grow their knowledge. They want to be intelligent like myself. I don't think that's limited to me. They want to go and wake up their genius. So I've asked and observed and studied, all the Nobel Prize winners, the greatest philosophers, greatest mystics, the greatest contributors, people who've done, great patents and genius, all the geniuses, and establishing the most common denominators in these individuals and how to awaken these denominators. And one thing I'm absolutely certain about is that if a person lives congruently with their highest values, they give themselves permission to be an unborrowed visionary, and they have the most original ideas and thoughts, and they have confidence to let them out. And I've been blessed to. I'm in Tokyo here, and I just had 5 new universities now incorporate this as of this week. Just came in this week, and I've been blessed to share it with lots of students in all different levels of education. But I'm absolutely certain. We took a group in a township in South Africa. In Alexandria, we had a 27% pass rate matric. This is an extremely poor area where people don't make even $100 a year. To 97% in 1 year by applying the principles. It was astonishing. It outdid what I was expecting.
That's incredible.
It is. And the truth is, people love to learn. They just love to learn what's meaningful and inspiring to them, what's truly highest on their values. And if they can't see how the curriculum that they're studying or the knowledge that they have to learn at work is helping them fulfill what's most meaningful to them, they won't be engaged in the learning process, and they'll go into short-term memory, not long-term associations. And so I'm going to be sharing with them how to empower their mind and how to, the same thing I've done and help other people wake up their creativity and genius. I'm going to share with them how to do that night. Then I'm going to go on from there to a career. No one goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill what's meaningful to them. And if they don't feel that the job description or the mission of the company or primary objective of the company are helping them fulfill what's meaningful to them, they're not engaged. And I've developed engagement systems that we've worked just in this country. Probably 10 major companies are now using it. Uniqlo Corporation, which is the largest manufacturing of clothing good, they're now using it. Panasonic, Yahoo, Japanese Electronic Computer Corporation, Hitachi. These companies are now utilizing this tool of engagement. And what we do is we do a value determination, which I've got on my website, which is free to people. And they go through this process. We determine what they really demonstrate their life as valuable. And then we link the job description to that. Because once they can see that what they're doing at work can help them fulfill what's meaningful to them, they take on an ownership and a pride in their work, and they get engaged. And it's a science. It's duplicatable. It works. I just did a training program, 2-day training program again for consultants this week to do it. And I want to share how that's done. And there's no reason why a person can't do that and have an inspiration in their work. Now, once they do that, they activate their executive center in their brain. And that's where inspired vision and strategic planning and executing plans and self-governance come about. And that increases the probability of them giving themselves permission to be more entrepreneurial and take on leadership roles in their own career path. And so that is why I hope that people can make it to that program, because I know that if they're sitting on the fence working for somebody else and they're wanting to do something that's their own, because as you know, you pay the most taxes working for somebody else. You pay less taxes legitimately if you work for yourself, and you pay the least taxes once you invest. So it could start the career path and the trajectory by listening to this. The third thing I do is I talk about money. People want to master finances. They want more money at the end of their life than life at the end of their money, and they want to make sure that they're masters of the money instead of slaves. And so I'm going to show them that the hierarchy of their values dictates their financial destiny. And if they do not have a certain hierarchy of values, the probability of financial independence is extremely low. And how to shift that. And I have 6 steps that I've shared with people all over the world on how to do that. And I'm absolutely certain the people who follow these 6 steps, it changes their trajectory financially. We've got thousands of cases of it. And so I want to share with them what they can do about that. And that will be worth the course that evening, I'm certain, particularly if they come the next day on financial mastery. There's no way they can do that day without having a change in their financial class, their positioning. So I'm going to be sharing that. But then the next one is relationships. Everybody wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are. And who they are is an expression of what they value most. Their highest value, their identity revolves around. That's what they spontaneously are committed to. If their highest value is raising beautiful children, then they'll identify themselves as a mother. If they're an entrepreneur, their highest values is running companies, then they'll see themselves as an entrepreneur. So I show people, since people want to be loved as they are, I show people how to communicate what they value in terms of the people that they interact with value. Could be their spouse, could be their kids, could be the people they work with most consistently, their social friends. I show them the science of linking values so you don't have to fix anybody. And you can be appreciated for who you are, and you can appreciate other people. Because if you ever talk down to people and think that their values are less important than yours, you'll carelessly project your values onto them and talk down to them. And in the process of doing it, want to fix them and change them. And nobody wants to be fixed and changed. They just want to be honored and loved for who they are. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that. And I've seen that literally transform relationships and salvage a lot of challenges in relationships. And I'll show people that people are not committed to you. They're committed to the fulfillment of their own values. And if you can help them get what they want, as Zig Ziglar used to teach me when I was 20, you're going to get what you want. So I'm going to be helping them in their relationship dynamics. That's why I want people to come, because there's going to be tools, practical things they can do in every one of the 7 areas of life. The next area is social leadership. We all want to make a difference and leave a mark and have some sort of legacy and not be forgotten when we die. And I'm going to show how to wake up a leader. There is an inherent leader in every human being. It is in the area of their highest value. But if they subordinate to other people and compare themselves to other people instead of compare their daily actions to their own dreams, they will inject the values of others and injunct their morals into their life and try to be somebody they're not and live in the shadows of people instead of stand on the shoulders of giants. We're not here to, live in shadows. We're here to stand strong and stand out, not fit in. And what happens is people are frightened of being rejected, and so they fit in and they hold themselves back from their own greatness. And I'm going to show people how to wake up their leader. And this will be an eye-opening, and I'll show them that the magnitude of space and time in their life and their vision is based on how congruent they are and how to wake that up and give themselves permission to do something really great in the world. I didn't believe I could do what I do today when I was young, but I've just followed these principles and applied them, and it's given me permission to do something globally today. And I'm watching opportunities come in from around the world daily, and I know that it's simply because I'm applying these principles, nothing more. It's nothing unique to me other than I started living congruently. And the next area of, besides leadership, is physical well-being and vitality and beauty. You want to be able to love you. I had a new song come out about 2 years ago that I released on looking in the mirror and being able to say wow. If you can't say wow, don't expect anybody else to. And if there's any part of you that you're not loving about your physique, and you have body dysmorphia and not honoring your own magnificence, so you've been given the perfect body to fulfill your mission. And so I'm going to show people how to appreciate who they are, what they look like, and how to capitalize on that, because everybody wants to be attractive and they all want to be able to be vital and energized. All the symptoms in our body are feedback mechanisms guiding us to our mission. And once you know how to interpret that, you'll see symptoms not as illness, you'll see symptoms as feedbacks. And then you'll see it on the way, not in the way. And we've been so hedonistically motivated by the medical profession that, the second you're in a symptom, you take a pill. Well, this is foolish because the symptoms aren't really illness many times. They're feedbacks. If you pig out and you got a stomach ache, your body's trying to tell you, don't pig out. So I'm going to give them insights on how to vitalize their body. So, I have, most people don't understand. I'm 63, and most people don't understand how I keep, a schedule that I do. And they go, where the hell do you get the energy? And I said, once you understand the source of energy, it's infinite. As long as you're congruent and you can see things on the way and you ask a new set of questions, because the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask questions on how it was, whatever's happening, helping me fulfill my highest value and mission, you'd be amazed what that does to vitality. And anyway, I'm going to show them how to vitalize themselves and have more energy and how to be more youthful and not age. Because a timeless mind, as Deepak used to tell them, is an ageless body. And you become timeless when you're doing what you really love and you're congruent. So that's why I don't want people to miss this night, because it's too important. And the last one is your inspiration, your spiritual path. And that does not necessarily limit itself to any form of religion. It could be. But I know a gentleman named Pat Falvey, who I wrote the foreword of his new book, who has climbed Mount Everest 4 times, climbed the 7 peaks in the world twice each, swam the Amazon, and hiked to the North and South Pole.
Wow.
And he gets up in the morning and he asks, what is my biggest fear today and how do I conquer it? And he's an amazing guy. And his spirituality, his communion with the universe, his relationship to the divine, if you will, the shininess within his heart of what he wants to do, is doing adventures. Other people, it may be doing yoga. Other people, it may be doing prayers and meditation. I don't care what the path is. I just know that if you're not living inspired life, you're missing out on life. And so I want to show people how to do that. And it doesn't matter. It's respectful of any background or faith or belief system. But I'm going to show people how to live an inspired life. So you have a spiritual quest, a mind quest, a vocational quest, a financial quest, a family quest, a social quest, and a physical well-being quest. These are the 7 areas of our life. In any area of our life we don't empower, people will overpower. We're designed to be overpowered by others to catalyze us to empower our life. So this accessing your 7 greatest powers is what that night is about. And I'm absolutely certain that if people can get there, they're going to say thank you. They're going to know there's a giant within all of us, and we sometimes don't let it out. And I'm going to show people how to let it out. And I'm absolutely certain that the principles that I'm going to share are going to be meaningful, will be inspiring, and it works. I've got track record proving it. I've been teaching 45 years. I've got a good track record with it. So
definitely. And it sounds like a fantastic event. And my partner, Lisa, actually saw you speak at Principia a few years ago with PSI seminars. And she's been completely inspired by your work, along with many other people here in Vancouver. So there's no doubt that they're going to benefit greatly by coming out to your event on Tuesday, October 10th. So I wanted to just get into a little bit about somebody who's maybe disempowered. In fact, I'd like to even talk a little bit about duality. And again, my partner Lisa was talking about how you're really big on this idea of duality, order versus chaos, darkness and light, and how that we have these opposing forces that are at play all the time. And Carl Jung actually said that the first step towards enlightenment is to encounter the shadow. in the shadow within ourselves and doing that shadow work and looking in the places where we don't really want to look and looking at the things that are about ourselves that are uncomfortable to look at. If somebody was going to start in that area of looking at the things that they don't necessarily like about themselves too much, how would you recommend that they start identifying those areas?
Well, I developed a methodology over the last 45 years called the Demartini method. And this method I've been blessed to share. I just did another training on it also this week. We launched another 40 Japanese facilitators. So what this method is a series of questions that you ask yourself that are deeply reflective and transcendent. So for instance, let's say you meet somebody and they do something that you react emotionally to and you withdraw from. Let's say they verbally criticize you or something. The first question you ask is what specific trait, action, or inaction, because we judge people by commissions and omissions. What specific trait, action, inaction have they displayed or demonstrated that I most resent or withdraw from or dislike? And you define it, because you first have to define it. Many people are nebulous and they don't master their life because they have nebulous perceptions instead of getting concise. And you define it. And then the next thing you do is you go in there and you ask, okay, whatever we see in other people is a reflection of us. Because we filter our world through our own value system. We evaluate. And I said, all right, now where and when, go to the moment where and when you've displayed or demonstrated this particular trait, action, inaction, and who have you demonstrated to and who's seen you demonstrate this? It's about owning the trait. It's easy to want to project, but the old biblical statement was pluck the mote out of your own eye before you pluck it out of somebody else. And I learned this many years ago, and I went to the Oxford Dictionary, which is a large dictionary with thin print, thin paper and small print. And I went through page by page and studied each word and identified 4,628 human behavioral traits in that book and circled every one of them. And then out to the side of that, I wrote down the name of the person who I perceived at that time in my life to be the most extreme expressor or exemplifier of that particular trait, that behavior. So honest, dishonest, kind, cruel, nice, mean, considerate, inconsiderate, whatever the trait would be. And I wrote down the name of the person that in my awareness was the most extreme example of it. Then I went and I asked, so where and when do I demonstrate and display, or have I demonstrated and displayed this trait, this behavior, this action, inaction, and where else, and where else, and where else, until I owned the trait equal to what the most extreme person I had ever found. And I went through 4,628 traits, and I found that I had every trait. I was nice, I was mean, I was kind, I was cruel, I was open, I was closed, I was considerate, I was inconsiderate, I was honest, I was dishonest at different moments. And I went and owned all 4,628 traits. And I found out that I had every one of them. And I found out next, the trait that I initially thought may have been positive or negative, I asked if I thought it was positive, what are the downsides to that trait? Every trait is neutral until somebody with a narrow mind labels the trait. And then I found out on the things that I thought were negative, what are the upsides to that trait? And I discovered that there was a time for every trait. There's a place. And I realized I didn't need to get rid of half of myself to love myself, that every trait was needed. Nietzsche mentioned this, and so did Machiavelli and Aristotle and Plato. I realized that some of the greats have always emphasized that you're here to embrace all parts of you. There's an old philosophical and theological construct that says at the level of the essence of the soul, nothing's missing in us. We have no disowned parts. We have the pleromic wholeness. But at the level of the existence of our senses, things appear to be missing. And our pride makes us too proud to own some of the traits, and our humbleness makes us too proud or too humble to own some of the traits. Therefore, we minimize ourselves to others we look up to because we're too humble to admit what we see in them is inside us. Or we're too proud to admit the people we resent. We're too proud to own those traits. But in fact, if we look deeply and reflect, we have them all. I have it. If I went up to somebody, and I've done this in thousands of people, and I went up to them and I looked them straight in the eye and I said, You're always nice, you're never mean. You're always kind, you're never cruel. You're always giving, you're never taking. You're always generous, you're never stingy. You're always up, you're never down. You're always positive, never negative. You're always peaceful, you're never wrathful. Do you believe me? They look at me and they go, not exactly. And I say, well, you're always negative, you're never positive. You're always down, you're never up. You're always critical, you're never praising. You're always wrathful, never peaceful. You're always, inconsiderate and stingy, never considerate and generous. Do you believe me? And he goes, no. I said, well, if I said to you, sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're generous, sometimes you're stingy, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, would you believe me? And they go, yeah. So we have a built-in thermostat, a homeostat, an intuitive knowing inside that we have both sides. So the second we are living by our highest values, where we have the greatest resilience and adaptability, and we're able to have objectivity instead of subjective bias, and open ourselves to having all parts that we need, we start to give ourselves permission to own all of it. So the Demartini method is asking, where do you do this? Now, I've taken 80,000 people plus through that exercise in my breakthrough experience, and probably another 100,000 people in one-on-ones. And I'm absolutely certain that we have everything. And we don't need to get rid of any part of ourselves to love ourselves. And what I do is I show people how to appreciate all those parts and balance out our perceptionless parts. Once I do that, I ask, okay, so that now that you've owned those parts, the parts you admire or despise, if you're admiring it, what are the downsides? Sometimes we think that our generosity is always positive, but our generosity can entitle people and disable people and make them dependent and rob them of incentive. And sometimes we rescue people in charitable formats and find that we've robbed them of their own drive and their own dignity, accountability, responsibility, and productivity. And sometimes our stinginess actually gave them incentive to stand on their own 2 feet. And if we look carefully, we'll find out that all the traits that we have, if they weren't purposeful, they would have gone extinct by Maupertuis's law of least action. So we need all the traits. So I don't teach people how to get rid of half of themselves to try to be a one-sided person, because as the wisdom of the Buddha says, the desire for that which is unavailable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is the source of human suffering. I teach people how to embrace all sides of themselves so they can love themselves, look in the mirror and go, thank you, as you are. Om Tat Sat. When people start to neutralize their judgments of themselves and other people, they have a deep appreciation, love for themselves and others. Then I go in there and show them that they have the other side, so they don't sit there and hide from themselves with some sort of a label. Because it's easy to be labeled into some sort of a type instead of own all the traits. And then I show them that whatever they do, at the moment they do it, there's somebody doing the opposite in a complementation of opposites. It's called the law of heuristic escalation in sociopolitical studies. And I make them deeply aware of that doing the method. And then they realize that whatever role they're playing, they're still worthy of love. And sometimes they beat themselves up because they're comparing themselves to social idealisms that they've injected by paradigms of traditions and conventions that are antiquated, and not honoring the magnificence of who they are today. And I help them break free of those things, because they can't stand out and be unique if they're constantly fitting in, trying to be somebody they're not. If you're a fish and you see a cat and you go, God, I envy the cat, I wish I could climb a tree, you're going to beat yourself up. Or if you're a cat, you're going to wish you could swim. But you're designed for who you are, and honoring your own mission according to your own values is what's wiser than comparing yourself to others. We're not here to compare ourselves to others. We're here to compare our own actions to our own highest values and our own dreams, and how congruent we are with that. That's what leads to greatness. So the exercise is literally has 68 questions. Those are the first 3. And if you go through those questions, you'll be broken down with tears of gratitude and love for yourself and other people. So I say to people, no matter what you've done or not done, you're worthy of love. And a lot of people have difficulty doing that because they compare themselves to these idealisms instead of compare themselves to their own actions. So the Demartini method is a way of helping you appreciate both sides of yourself, honor it, and not try to get rid of half of you. Because actually I did a study when I was 28 to 30 years old. I did probably the most extensive study on so-called positive thinking that's ever been done. And I found out that I never got rid of any trait in my life. I still have every trait that I've ever thought I was going to get rid of. And I still have all the traits that I've been thinking were going to go away. So I transformed the construct of self-improvement to finally honoring all of you instead of trying to get rid of half of you. Because you're not going to love yourself if you keep judging yourself thinking you're supposed to be one-sided when in fact you're both-sided. You have a set of values. When people support your values, you're very nice. They challenge your values, you can be tough. I've been in an airplane. I fly a lot. I've done nearly 18 million miles now. And I've been in airplanes, and if they tell me, oh, Dr. Demartini, we've upgraded you to first class, and you have the specialized club lounge, can we get you anything? It's easy to smile. But when they say, by the way, we've overbooked and somehow you'll have to miss the plane, I don't always smile and say, well, I'm so grateful. I sometimes sit there and I go, can I speak to your supervisor? And I get tough on them. And I say, no, I think that I paid my first class ticket. I think it's time for me to get my seat. Thank you. And, I will be whatever it takes to get the mission sometimes. So if I'm sitting there trying to get rid of half myself, I will not allow myself the necessary behaviors to get what I want in life. And Machiavelli said this, that you have to err the saint and the sinner, the virtue and the vice, and the hero and the villain if you want to get to the top. You don't make it to the top of anything without honoring both. Steve Jobs had an image prior to his movie and his book that he was this kind of laid back guy, creative mind and everything else. But then you discover that he was also a tough person and was, challenging to deal with and was sometimes critiquing. He had everything. And that's what made him great. You're not great because of one-sidedness. You're great because you have exactly what's needed to get the job done, your mission in life. So I'm going to liberate people in my presentations to help them love themselves. And I have many people come up to me and says, I've been beating myself up because I thought I should be this way. I'm supposed to be that way. You're not here to live in imperative injunctions of other people. You're here to be authentic to yourself. And that's how you make the difference. Your own unique values is what allow you to make the difference. As long as you fit in, you're diluting the power to make the difference that you want in life. So I'm going to be sharing that on this program that I'm doing there. And I'm absolutely certain that I've seen enough results with thousands and thousands of people to know it liberates people and gives them the permission to be themselves. People want to be loved for who they are.
Well, that's a fantastic answer. That pretty much covers everything I could have asked about that. I wanted to quickly get into some of the questions that I asked to the PSI community. And the first one, I think, is a nice follow-up to what you just said there by Daniel Close. And the question is, what are some of the social norms that we adhere to that you fundamentally disagree with?
Well, God, I could go for a couple hours on that.
What are the big ones?
People many times, Paul Dirac, the Nobel Prize winner, said, it's not that we don't know so much, we know so much that isn't so. We have injuncted and injected all types of social idealisms that we think we're supposed to live by. And we are here to love ourselves and appreciate our contribution and make a contribution. And sometimes we have these idealisms about how we're supposed to play, and we put on a facade and trap ourselves in our desiring to be accepted by these social norms. Einstein said, my contempt for authority is what made me one. And Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. And so fitting into the norm is the classical way to become part of the herd and to be a sheep, not a shepherd. And having the courage to stand out and be transcendent and be an unborrowed visionary, as Ayn Rand described. An unborrowed visionary, to me, is wisdom. As Emerson said, when an unborrowed visionary is released into the world, a conflagration of such magnitude, a fire is let loose of enthusiasm, and you can't stop the person. They're unstoppable. And I believe that when a person identifies their highest value and sets sail as captain of their ship and master of their destiny and fate, and take command and have their human will match the order of the universe, as Bohm would describe, the hidden order, the implicate order, they do extraordinary things. And I believe that the social norm is to fit in and to subordinate to outer authority instead of become the authority. I teach people how to transcend outer authority. I have a program, the Breakthrough Experience, which I've taught 1,116 times now. And this program is quite intriguing because I take the people that you look up to in the world. I take the greatest thinkers, the greatest business leaders, the greatest financial leaders, the greatest family dynasty leaders, the greatest social political leaders, the greatest sport Olympics, greatest supermodels, the greatest spiritual leaders. And we identify the traits that these people have. And then we own them. And we stand on their shoulders. And I've been blessed to do this thousands of times. And believe it or not, I've never found somebody that couldn't own the traits of the greats. And then once they realize that nothing's missing in them, and they have what they see in others, they give themselves permission to play on the same playing field. And I've seen people, I watched a young man all of a sudden be on the BRW list of his business for 3 years in a row and end up being the creative units for Google because he gave himself permission to do it. I saw another guy who was in golf who was a golf pro, an average golf pro, win the PGA Master Golf Pro. Only 15 people in history ever received it. 2 of his clients won the British Open and the European Open 1 year. I watched people in Hollywood all of a sudden go from $75,000 to $20 million doing this exercise. I've seen amazing things happen when people give themselves permission to honor what they're really made out of and recognize their magnificence instead of being trapped in their insignificance. So yeah, giving themselves permission to step out of fitting in and allow themselves to be unique, I think is the biggest one that I love helping people break through and transcend. Kohlberg, the psychologist, said that the most primitive morality is avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. From 0 to 1 years old, you're like a little animal doing that. And then you, from 1 to 12, you subordinate to individual authorities, mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers. From 12 to 13 all the way to about 36 to 42, you very commonly subordinate to local community, city, state, nation, or world views, traditions, conventions, and mores. And then probably at 36 and in a midlife crisis, you start to wake up and realize, you know what? It's my life. What do I want to dedicate my lifetime halfway through this thing? What is it? There's no rules here. I can set the rules. And you finally reach a point of transcendence. And then you give yourself permission to stand on the shoulders of giants. And very few people make it to transcendence. There's a science in how to do that. I'm gonna share some of that on that first evening. And I'm absolutely certain that it's inside all of us, ready to do it. But we're borrowed visionaries instead of unborrowed visionaries. We allow ourselves to be ruled by the sheep. And as you know, when I do the second day there on financial mastery and freedom, the sheep don't make it to financial independence. And as long as you go with the masses, you're going to be a mess. You're going to fit in instead of stand out. And you're not going to be wealthy because that's not what the masses do. Only less than 1% of the world becomes financially independent. And I've outlined them. I've interviewed billionaires and many of them. I've been financially independent for many years now. And I'm going to show them how to do that because there's absolutely no reason why you can't become fortunate financially serving people and serving vast numbers of people and being caring. I always say if you're poor, you're not caring about humanity. If you care about humanity, you'll find your talents and find a way of directly or indirectly helping somebody else. And so I'm going to show people what are the keys to those people that have become very fortunate. And I've summarized thousands of books on this topic and met many, many people and interviewed and been blessed to do it myself. So I'm absolutely certain that day will be more than revealing financially for people. And they can expect a complete turning point in their finances that day.
Excellent. Great. Thank you for that. The next question I have is from Tina Lum. And this is a question around relationships. And her question is, should partners have the same values in relationships, or is it good to have differing values to maintain balance within your relationship?
Well, I love that answer, that question. I mean, we have a natural tendency to seek that which supports our values, but we have a natural tendency to attract that which challenges our values. And that's why similars and opposites attract. We're attracted to similars, but we attract opposites. Now, the ancient Greeks said that when you see more similarities than differences, you have infatuation. Because when you're infatuated, you go, oh my God, we have the same number of eyes, the same number of ribs, the same number of teeth. We're soulmates. And when we see more differences than similarities, we resent. We don't have the same goals. We see in two different directions. We don't see eye to eye anymore. But when we have a balance of similarities and differences, a perfect balance of similarities and differences, we have love. Because if any two people are exactly the same, one's not necessary. You're not going to grow being with you. You'd probably kill yourself if you lived with yourself. I think there was a movie many years ago that Rod Serling hosted called Twilight Zone. And this movie, there was a guy that got up in the morning and he went to downstairs to the elevator and then went to a little coffee shop and then went to work. And all along through his day, he thought in his mind, God, if everybody was just like me, we'd have a better world. I wish everybody was like me. And so he was angry with everybody because he had an unrealistic expectation of others living in his values, which is foolish, and will automatically generate what I call the ABCDs of negativity. So the next morning he woke up, and to his surprise, everybody was him. The lady at the coffee shop was him. The lady at the front desk at his condo was him. All the people that worked for him with him. At the end of the day, he prayed, please give me back the people. I can't live with myself. So many times people think and fantasize, oh, we need to have exactly the same values. But that's a guaranteed boredom. And if you have complete difference in values, you'll have burnout. But if you find the balance between the two and know how to ask the question, keep yourself at the cutting edge between them, because maximum growth and development of human beings occurs at the border of support and challenge, order and chaos. You need both. You need prey and predator. That's why ecosystems have both. Because if you didn't have predator, you'd overeat the prey and have no fitness. The predator keeps you fit, keeps you on your toes, keeps you eating just the right amount, and keeps you moving. You need both the support and the challenge. If you get cocky and start to think you're proud and puffed up, your spouse is there to deflate you, to keep you back into who you are. And if you get down, they lift you up. They're there to keep you authentic. If you think and you fantasize that a relationship is supposed to make you happy, hedonistically happy, you haven't grown up.
Yeah.
Because it's there to help you grow and do something extraordinary with your life. And so support and challenge is the game of relationships. And mastering the skill of asking questions to keep current in your realization that there's always both and they need to have both is wisdom. So I teach people, and I'll be mentioning some of this on the first night when I come there on accessing your seven greatest powers. I'll be talking about that component because people have delusions. They have this delusion that their values are right and that other people are supposed to live in their values. And that's a guaranteed recipe for destruction of a relationship. They want to be loved and appreciated for who they are. So if you can't see how what their highest values are helping you fulfill yours, and you can't see how your highest values is helping them fulfill theirs, you're going to have alternating monologues instead of dialogues in your relationship. And you'll be not listening when they're talking, and they're not listening when you're talking, and you're decay. So knowing how to appreciate the other person is the key. And that they want to be appreciated for who they are, and who they are is an expression of their highest values. So you have to know what their values are, and they're a customer. Every relationship is a customer. They're not committed to you. They're committed to their values. If you're not empowering all areas and becoming a great catch and maintaining them, just maintain your catch, and you're not learning the art of communicating in their values, you're automatically going to have an unfulfilling relationship because they want to be loved for who they are. Learn how to do that. Amazing what you can do in a relationship.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And last question here. And this is one just for myself because this is one that's been on top of my mind for a while. And it is, how does one, first of all, what is your definition of a true leader? And then how does one become that? And I'm sure you could fill a whole podcast on this subject alone. But if you could touch on that briefly, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, I do quite a few presentations around the world on that topic, many countries. But a leader is somebody who has identified what's the hierarchy of their values and structured their life in such a way that they're living congruent with their highest value, where they are spontaneously inspired from within and require no outside motivation from without to fulfill what's meaningful to them. I'm a leader in the teaching industry because it's my highest value. And if I tried to be a leader in cake decorating, cupcake manufacturing, I would not excel because I'd be trying to be somebody I'm not. So first is identifying what you value most and then structuring your life and prioritizing your life where you're feeling that. That's how you spontaneously wake up a natural leader. A leader is in different areas. And it's not just business and finance, as some people think. It's in any area that's meaningful to you. If your highest value is raising a family, you'll be a leader of your family. If your highest value is business, you'll be a leader of your business or a business or a series of businesses. If you're a leader of people and socially, politically, that'll be it. So you have to start with what's congruent with what's highest on your value. That's the secret. Once you do that and delegate lower priority things and give yourself permission to fill your day with absolute highest priority things, you can wake up a leader. I'm amazed at how many people didn't know that. And the second they started doing it, they started building momentum. And it's amazing. I mean, there's a natural leader ready to emerge in every human being. But what they do is they subordinate to other people, try to live in other people's values, cloud the clarity of their own mission, lose sight of who they are, and try to be somebody they're not. And that's guaranteed to be a follower doing that because you're a sheep, not a shepherd. So I tell people that we need to first identify your values. That's the starting point. Find out what your life demonstrates is truly important to you. And now let's start reorganizing and restructuring and designing our life where we get to fulfill our lives so we can't wait to get up in the morning and do what we're here to do. When you do, people can't wait to get our service and we wake up our leadership. And you have to give yourself permission to do it. I received, when I was a practicing doc, I had a patient come in many years ago. She was probably 35 years old, 40 maybe. And she came in with a book in her hand. And she said, Dr. Demartini, I think this book that I've had in my life for many years, and it's been in our family for many, many years, I think I'd like to give it to you. I said, well, thank you. And it was a book by Edmund Shaftesbury. And it's called Instantaneous Personal Magnetism. She says, I never really got to appreciate this book, but I have a feeling you will appreciate it. So I got this book. Shaftesbury was the teacher of Andrew Still, who was the founder of osteopathy. D.D. Palmer, founder of chiropractic. Milton Erickson, founder of hypnosis. Schwab, Napoleon Hill, the Kennedy family. This guy taught a lot of people that are famous. And this book, I went through it about a page and 119 or so. There was a handwritten note in it written by Rose Kennedy. This book was handed by the senior Kennedy to the father of this woman. And it was the mission statement of Rose Kennedy. And the mission statement said, I dedicate my life to raising a family of world leaders.
Wow.
That was her highest value. That's why she became a leader of a family of leaders.
Well, that's incredible. Well, Dr. Demartini, is there anything else that you wanted to add in today before we see you up here in Vancouver on October 10th?
Yeah, I just want to tell people, or share that no matter what they've done or not done, they're worthy of love. When they finally embrace all parts of themselves, they don't have to fix themselves. Okay. I had a man in San Francisco. Well, I was doing a seminar there, and one of the attendees from the seminar asked if I could come to the hospital to meet with one of his friends that was dying of AIDS. So I went to this hospital. I walked in and saw this emaciated man with sores all over his body. He wasn't doing well. They expected him just to go in a few days. And I went over to him and I looked at him. He had to lift his head up. And I held his hands. And I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, would you repeat with me this statement? I said, no matter what I've done or not done, I'm worthy of love. And I had him repeat that statement many times. And the people in the hospital there with him said the same thing, but to him, no matter what you've done, you're worthy of love or not done. The man started crying. He sat up and then leaned over. And literally, I put my arms on his back. And he cried. And for about 5 or 10 minutes, he just let it out. And finally, he said, "That's the first time I've ever been able to love myself. Thank you." He came out of that hospital. He didn't die. We compare ourselves to other people and don't honor our own magnificence. So my message is to say, no matter what I've done or not done, I'm worthy of love. Because the truth is, you never make a mistake in your own values. You only think you make a mistake when you compare your actions to somebody else's. And the moment you realize that everything's on the way, not in the way, you give yourself permission to stand on the shoulders of giants and give yourself permission to do something more amazing. So that's the last statement I'll say. And I hope that if they can come to my class that I'll be doing there, that you've been gracious enough to put together for me. And in the 2 classes, the one on accessing your 7 greatest powers and also financial mastery and freedom, you can just finally get ahead now. I'm absolutely certain that those days, that evening and that day, will be life-changing. So if that man did for me when I was 17 is what I'm going to do that night. I want to do for others. So if they can make it, I promise them they're going to get something out of it.
Well, that's fantastic. I think that last affirmation, no matter what I've done or not done, I'm still worthy of love, is something that we can all incorporate into our lives more. So thank you for that. And of course, if anybody out there would like to attend the event on October 2nd and the 11th, you can pick up the tickets at consciouslivingradio.org. And I encourage you all to come out because it's going to be a fantastic night, fantastic event. So thank you very much for your time, Dr. John Demartini. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and we look forward to seeing you in Vancouver.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for the interview, and have a great day, and I'll see you in just a matter of days.
Absolutely. Take care.